Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Jason Wright Show. This is Freestyle Friday. This is where I pick a topic, a current event, or just anything that comes into this crazy three-ring circus of a mind that I carry around with me everywhere I go, and I bring it to you, the Jason Wright Show audience. And today, I've got a topic that I have been wanting to talk about for some time now, and that is how to be a good conversationalist. Now, a lot of people just kind of take that for granted. They think that, well, there's no big deal. You sit down with someone, you talk, there's a conversation, boom, that's it. And a lot of times that can be the case if it's someone like a parent or if it's someone you're really close to, where there's absolutely no expectation on the conversation at hand. However, when you get out of those really close interpersonal communication instances with family and friends that are really close to you, that kind of know you, that kind of understand how to keep a conversation going with you, that's when it can get tricky. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I believe that being a good conversationalist can be one of the single greatest assets that you can have as a professional, as just as a human being in general. If you want to widen your network, if you want to widen your sphere of influence, if you want to win friends and influence people like Dale Carnegie spoke of, one of the most surefire ways to do that is to be a good conversationalist. Now, here's what's kind of bizarre about me doing this topic. I hate conversations. Let me explain. I like conversations with my wife. I love conversations with my wife, unless they're on the phone. I don't like to talk on the phone with anybody. I hate talking on the phone. But when it comes to my wife, my daughters, a close friend, a colleague, there are several of those folks, and I mean just several, that I really enjoy having a conversation with. But for the most part, I hate small talk and conversation. But I know how important it is. And two, because I hate it so much, I have developed a certain set of tools and tactics to try to be really good at it, which thus makes it more enjoyable. So the reason why most small talk sucks, and this is what we'll do, we'll just start here with small talk, how to be a better small talker. I'm talking about those times when you're at a business convention, you're at a wedding, you're at dinner with people that aren't really close friends. They're more like acquaintances, and somehow you got roped into it. When you're on an airplane and the person just won't shut up and you feel rude if you don't talk to them. Those are the kind of instances that I'm talking about in this moment. Now, the first thing you have to realize, let's say that you're in some sort of a professional setting where you want to put your best foot forward. You want to make the person feel good about themselves. And that's one of the things you have to think about is like you take on a sense of responsibility for the quality of that conversation. If you will do this from the beginning, you will be leaps and bounds above where most people are. Most people walk into settings, social engagements with no goals, no presupposed ideas of how their conversations are going to go, the impression they're going to make on the room, the people they're going to meet. And there are a few things you can do to set yourself up for having good conversations. So let's take one of these scenarios right now. What do you do when you walk into a room, and let's say that you're on some business convention and there is a happy hour that you don't want to go to? You're like Jason Wright. Let's say you're like Jason Wright and you would much rather skip all of the social engagements, go right to your room, read a book, put on a movie, and go to bed really early. But you also, like Jason Wright often does, you know that makes you look kind of aloof, disengaged, cold, and it's just part of your job to be there and to meet people and to discuss whatever the topic at hand is and just to be a good, willing participant. I mean, just have a good attitude. So you decide you're going to show up. Here are some things you can do to prepare to have good conversations before you go in. First of all, it's your attitude. Go in with the mindset. Now, I'm really speaking to, by the way, to those people who are like me, who I am an introvert who is disguised as an extrovert. You wouldn't think that an introvert would have a podcast, and if you met me in person, you would never in a million years assume that I'm an introvert. But I really am. I don't want to talk to people. I'm very much a recluse. I don't want to be in social engagements. I don't socialize at all. And so therefore, that's why I have to practice these things. So one of the things that you should do is go in and immediately have the attitude, whoever I talk to, I will leave there knowing more about them than they know about me. Let me explain. A lot of people in these instances, what they do is they walk up, and when you engage with them, their default setting is to give you their resume, let you know how important they are, give social indications about their income through like where their kids go to school, where the kids went to college, where they live, this sort of thing. If you want to relax during a conversation, make questions your goal versus answers. Now, this can be tricky because a lot of times people will come up and I've done this. I did this to Jimlyn the first time we ever went to dinner. I had this mission to know more about her than she knew about me by the time dinner was over. And as a result, it scared the crap out of her. She thought that I was interrogating her in a way. And I was doing it very sweetly. I was really just asking her all kinds of questions. I wanted to know about her, and I wanted to make her the center of attention. I didn't want it to be about me. And so you have to make sure you're delicate with this. It takes some practice, but you want to make sure that you're showing interest in them. And this is going to do several things. One, it's going to help you remember their name. If you can learn some facts about them, where they're from, do they have children, some of their interests, then you're going to have some associations with them that are going to help you to learn their name, which is huge. Another thing is you can give yourself the opportunity to ask some finite questions. I actually learned this from Jerry Seinfeld, of all people. Jerry Seinfeld, if you know anything about him, he's kind of a curmudgeon. He doesn't like to socialize. He just doesn't like people in general, I don't think. And one of the things I heard him say one time was when he goes into a conversation, he has like three questions that he can ask a person that everyone has an answer to. Where are you from? Do you have children? And how many do you have? Or are you married? There's these questions that you can just go in, and that way you avoid the dead silence. Now, I'm going to get to the dead silence in a minute, okay? But because that's a whole nother thing to tackle. But right now, as it relates to what we're talking about, it's like that's how you keep the conversation going. And so you kill like two birds with one stone on that one. One, you fill the void, the vacuum of silence, but you also set yourself up as the interested, nice person that really wants to know who they're talking to. And that's something that people just love. People love to talk about themselves. People love the sound of their own name. And if you leave that party and those people go home and they think, wow, I feel like that guy, I feel like Jason really knows who I am. That's going to be incredible. Now, so those are some things you can do to prepare to go into the conversation, to go into the social engagement. But here's another thing you have to do. You have to realize in a conversation that you have responsibility. Let me explain. A good conversation is kind of like a game of catch. I throw you a ball, be that a question, an answer, and then you throw a ball back, a question or an answer. If you are someone that is selfish, you catch the ball and then you hold on to it, you put it in your pocket or you throw it down and you wait for the other person to go find another ball and throw it to you. First of all, it's probably going to be hard to find that next ball if you've given them nothing in return. And two, if you're expecting them to find multiple balls, then that's going to be really challenging. Imagine playing a game of catch like that. It would suck. No, you need to assume the responsibility that when they throw you the ball, you've got to throw the ball back. And that's one of the things I don't think a lot of people do. There's a guy here in town that I used to, whenever I owned my real estate brokerages, he was a broker himself. Actually, he was an appraiser and a broker. And when he would call, he would ask a question and then would just go silent. And so there was just this weird, awkward silence. You guys, I know you know what I'm talking about. And so I felt it was my job to go find another ball and pick it up and throw it to him. I would do that, more silence. Well, finally, after I'd gained some confidence and just got fed up with it, I played along. I played his game. He would call, ask a question, or I would respond, and he would go silent. And you know what? I made a point to just remain silent myself. And I got to tell you, those conversations were horrible. And I'm so glad they were limited to only a few and that I don't have to have them anymore because I never talked to the guy. But don't be that. Understand that you have a responsibility to keep the conversation going. Now, what you don't have a responsibility to do is to just completely carry someone through an entire conversation. What I do in those instances now is I just remove myself. And the best way to do that is, thank God, most social settings, there's a bathroom. I go to the bathroom. Excuse me, I got to run the restroom. Excuse me, I've got to make a call. Just break away. There's no reason to be tortured during a conversation. Now, here's another thing to do to be prepared to be a good conversationalist. But again, it's one of those deals that you've got to make sure you don't come across as like the first one, ask questions, but don't be an interrogator. The next one is have some good random knowledge at the ready, but don't come across as a savant or an armchair intellectual or somebody trying to impress somebody with just how smart you are. So I happen to be gifted with this ability to recall the most random, stupid, senseless facts that you can imagine. I tell my wife all the time, my head is full of random and useless facts. I have all sorts of useless talents. I'm a master, a ninja of useless talents. And the one time that I will say that my useless trivia comes in handy is in conversation. And the thing that has made my useless trivia most effective, or has added to my useless trivia the most, is being well read. I read a lot of books, and a lot of times I'm reading them and I don't even know that I'm reading anything that's going to be useful later on. But that turns out to be some of the best ways to really get a conversation going. And that's the thing too. Do some searching, do some detective work. Go sniff out whenever you're at one of these social engagements like I'm talking about. Like, weddings are the worst. I hate going to weddings. I don't like to dance. All I'm waiting for is for them to cut the cake and to get the hell out of there. That's usually my deal. But if I can find someone that either enjoys a movie that I like, or even better, has read a book that I've also read, that's money. That's a home run. So go seek out people that you can find some commonality with. They've gone on a trip that you've gone on. They've read a book that you've read. All of a sudden, you just short circuit all the other small talk, and you can find something that you might actually enjoy talking about. Now, since we're talking about being a quality conversationalist, one of the things I got to tell you is this: be aware of being a Tommy Topper. You know what a Tommy Topper is? That's somebody that says, well, we were in the Maldives last year, and then you come back and say, oh, really? Well, we went to Brando Island just the summer before. Oh, really? Well, we went to the Brando Island and we went skydiving in Greece. Oh, well, so you just top. So here's one of the best ways to not be a Tommy Topper. And I will say this. I think a lot of people that are Tommy Toppers, I've got a member of my family that she simply cannot hear anyone say anything about their experience without immediately boomeranging the conversation into something about her. I mean, if I were to tell her, you're not going to believe this, I just went. Jeff Bezos called me last night and said he needs to take a test flight to the moon, and he flew me in a private jet to a launch pad. Jeff Bezos and I flew to the moon. This family member would not ask one question about my trip to the moon. What they would do is automatically start telling some story about how one time my grandma said that she was looking at the moon and she saw or she would start recalling about whenever Neil Armstrong walked on the moon and where she was and who she was with and what it was like and what it meant to her. She would never even acknowledge that I had just been to the moon with Jeff Bezos. Okay, don't be that kind of person. It's narcissistic and it's annoying as hell. Trust me. This person, I don't even talk to him anymore. I mean, if you tell this person anything, well, damnedest thing happened. I lost my arm last week. Well, one time I sprained my ankle and it sure did hurt for the longest time. I mean, it's and you think I'm exaggerating. This is exactly how this person really is, who shall remain nameless. But anyway, don't it's okay to share your experiences, but here's the way to try to avoid being a Tommy Topper. Now, I have a 3-question goal, but it doesn't have to be 3 questions. It can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3. But 3 is kind of the max, and it can also be a really solid minimum. If someone tells you that they have, if you're just in a random conversation, and they tell you about a vacation that they have been on, France, let's say they've been to Paris, okay? If you've also been to Paris, your immediate default reaction, I can almost guarantee you, is to talk about your trip to Paris, which basically means that they told you about their trip to Paris, and that's all you need to know. They said they went to Paris in the summer of 2020 and blah, 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 blah. And you immediately, if you've been to Paris, you start talking about your trip to Paris. Well, what that does is that means that all of they're telling you about their trip to Paris did was prompt you to tell them about your story, in which, if you want to get really analytical about it, means that you didn't give a crap about their trip to Paris. So what do? And by the way, I think that's innocent. You're not being narcissistic. Some people are. I think the person I was mentioning earlier is just an absolute rabid narcissist. But most people, they're just doing it because they're trying to find commonality. Oh, you went to Paris? Well, so did I. Here's what we did. Try to ask 3 questions. So, where did you eat? Where was your favorite place to eat? Where did you stay? What parts of Paris did you go to? Did you go to Montmartre? Did y'all do the Louvre? What was it like? What were some of the highlights of your trip? Ask them 3 questions, and then what'll happen is they will automatically sense that you're interested, and then that will prompt them to show interest in your trip. So then they can ask you, where did you guys stay? Where were some of your favorite places to eat? You went to Montmartre. Did you go to Van Gogh's studio? What did y'all do up there? Did you go to the flea markets? Oh my gosh, you did? Did y'all find anything? And now all of a sudden it becomes a real conversation. And by the way, set a goal. Set a goal. Say, okay, you've been to Paris. I've been to Paris. I love Paris. I may go back one day. Let me see if I can learn something that I don't know about Paris. To me, that is one of the best ways to prepare for going into conversations also, is go in with the goal of learning something. If you're like me and small talk is torture, the thing that will make it absolutely bearable is to set a goal to learn. This isn't small talk. This isn't just, like I always say, small talk is like monkeys just going ooh, ooh, ah, ah. It's stupid. It's senseless. It doesn't mean anything unless you tie a goal to it. You go into the conversation with the attitude, I truly want to know something about this human being. How many things can I learn about this human being over the next 5 minutes? If you will do that, you're all of a sudden going to be a much, much better conversationalist. Now, it's also important to show interest. I mean, I think that's probably the most important thing. And I think that kind of dovetails nicely from what we've been talking about with asking the questions. Be sincere about being interested in who you're interacting with. If you will stop and tell yourself, it's like I once heard somebody say this whenever, as a way to try to be more present, is to, like, if you're doing the dishes, to tell yourself the whole time, I am doing the dishes right now. This is all I'm doing. I am doing the dishes. And that will bring you into a sense of presence. One of the things, and this is going to sound kind of morbid, I know it, I'm just going to tell you right up front, but this is one of the things that I do now. When I'm in a conversation with someone, first I'll tell myself, you are here right now to do nothing but speak to this person and listen to this person. That's what you're here to do. And then you know what I do? And it's crazy. I know it's morbid, but I think this person's going to die one day. This person will be dead one day. They will have a funeral. They will lay in a casket. I don't know if I'll know them then. Maybe it's a friend. Depending on how close you are to them, maybe you'll go to that funeral. But if you will start to imagine the mortality in the person you're talking to, at least for me, there's something about that keeps me present. I guess it's the knowing, the finite nature of life, that I might be in this conversation and I may not want to be here. It may not be the most interesting conversation I've ever had, but this person right here, right now, we're sharing this moment. And one day we're going to be 6 feet under. And there's something about that kind of pulls me into the presence of the person that I'm talking to. So I just thought, as kind of giving one of the podcast episodes with some real utility value, I thought that starting to have these, and I'm going to do more of these, on how do you handle certain people during conversations? How do you give answers that are non-offensive? How do you talk to people that you know believe completely differently than you? How do you use humor without, being offensive? I think that's very careful. There's a lot of topics on this that I think we can cover that, frankly, I think it's something that right now, young people these days don't have many conversations. It's so obvious that they are staring at their screens. There's a lot of texting. Most of their conversations are virtual. And even if they are actual conversations, they happen on the other end of their cell phone. One-on-one interaction, human beings, face-to-face, kind of that old school belly-to-belly time that we talk about as, us old folks in the business world, that is absolutely invaluable. A lot of the young people aren't getting this. So if you're a young person, stick around and shoot me an email to producers@textitan.com and ask questions if you have some struggles, or if there's something that you have questions about. How do I get through this? How am I a better conversationalist with people that are much older than me? There's a way to do that. And I think young people, you have no idea how older people will gravitate towards you and want to help you simply based on how good you're able to carry on a conversation. It says so much about you. I know it sounds judgy and maybe a little short-sighted, but I'm telling you, your interpersonal communication skills are something that, look, I've had to use it to overcome, and this isn't false humility, okay? It's really not. I'm a smart guy, okay? I'm probably moderately above average. But let me tell you something. It was not my brains that got me through life and business and up to this point. It was not. And I mean that in the most sincere way. But the fact that I can have a conversation with anybody. I don't care what their education level is. I don't care how accomplished they are. I can have a conversation with anybody, which reminds me of a great story about conversation with people that are incredibly successful. The natural thing to do is to go up to someone that's really, really successful and try to impress them by talking about yourself. And what the thing you have to remember is the person you're talking to, if they're this successful person, like if I went up to Brad Pitt, I wouldn't automatically probably want to start telling him about all the things I had done. And Brad Pitt, why did I use Brad Pitt? Let's use Steve Schwartzman. That's better. Business leader, not Brad Pitt, but let's do Steve Schwartzman. I wouldn't automatically start telling Steve Schwartzman about the first company I bought and this and that. What I'd probably want to do is, if I've got 5 minutes with Steve Schwartzman, one of the smartest business minds that has ever lived, I'd probably start asking him some questions on, tell me, I've read your books, I've read The King of Capital, I've read What It Takes, but while I've got you here, Mr. Schwartzman, just tell me, what are the first 3 things I need to look for in acquiring a business when I'm doing business valuation? If you had $100,000 to invest right now and it was the only $100,000 you had, what would you do with it? Where would you put it? Start asking him questions. Give him the opportunity to, one, flex his muscles that have made him worth some. I think last I looked, he was around $48 billion. But also, it's like a free consulting engagement. And so be willing to ask some questions. And if you really want to turn some people on their ear in a really good way, is whenever you're in a conversation and it's been teed up for you to be the interviewee, for you to be the one that is getting the questions answered, for you to flip it on them real quick and say, well, before you get started, can I ask you some questions? That just brings everything to such a comforting level. So young people, if you are in a job interview, and you probably wouldn't do it like at the onset, but in the middle of a job interview, the most effective question or the most effective technique I ever used in an interview one time was, this guy was a very successful executive, and he had been asking me questions. He was interviewing me, and then he said, "So, is there anything else that do you have any questions?" And there was one question I had. I said, "Yeah." I said, "I do have one. You've obviously been very successful here. Can you tell me why? Why do you think it is that you've had such success?" And he was flattered because I was sincere. I was sincere with it, but you could tell he was flattered. It was a great question. He loved the question, and it gave him an opportunity to kind of use some humility and dig in and tell me why he was successful. And it gave me a lot of understanding about who he was, why he was successful in that particular company, which told me about that company. It was just so young people that might be listening to this, don't be afraid to flip the script whenever you're the one that's supposed to be taking the questions. To make the conversation a little stronger, throw a question back that the interviewer is not expecting. That can be a very, very, I don't know, be very, very impactful. So hope you found this helpful. Can't believe I've gone on for 26 minutes about having conversations, but I do think it's important. I do think we need to have more conversations, and going into them with a little strategy can make a world of difference. This has been Freestyle Friday on the Jason Wright Show. I'm Jason, and I'm out.